You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast brought to you by 90 Min. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this edition, we're going to be discussing Mikel Arteta's bizarre press conference. Mikel Arteta faced the media today ahead of Arsenal's Carabao Cup tie with Manchester City tomorrow night. We're going to be dissecting some of what Mikel had to say. We're going to be talking about the situation at Arsenal in general. We'll be taking your comments and questions in the live chat. And let's see where it takes us. Don't forget, if you haven't already, make sure you smash the like button on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you're listening to us via the audio platforms, be sure to leave us a review. You can also check out last night's live fans phone-in show where we took some of your calls to get your thoughts and your feelings on what is currently going on at the club. Really interesting show, as always, with a variety of different views and opinions. So check that out as well if you haven't already. Right, without further ado, let's get into Mikel Arteta's press conference today. And there was one segment of the press conference in particular that's got a lot of Arsenal fans talking and a lot of the wider football world talking actually as well, because Mikel Arteta opted to defend his team's position by referring to some statistics that, in my opinion, don't mean a great deal. I mean, yes, you can use, statistics to try and paint pictures, and you can use them to assess things, but they're not the only thing that you should be looking at when assessing a team's performance, in my opinion. I think that there's something that you can use and there's something there is some value in, but to dominate your approach or to allow your approach, to be dominated by solely statistics, I think is wrong. And I think if that is what Mikel is doing, then it's no wonder that we're in the position that we're in. I'm not for a second suggesting that is all that Mikel looks at, but the way he spoke today and the way he used certain statistics to try and make his kind of case about why his team are going for a really unlucky phase at the moment, I found I just found it worrying. I just found it really, really worrying. Big hello to everybody watching us live at the minute. Ekene says, Harry, are you not going on 90 Min this afternoon? I was on the show, mate, but it was a pre-record. So that is going out, I'd imagine, probably sometime soon. So head over there and check that out. But I am on there. It is a pre-record and the Arsenal section is right at the end. So you'll hear me have a little bit of a, I don't want to say a rant because it wasn't a rant. A little bit of a, monologue on Arsenal or a little bit of therapy, just trying to get it out there, the way I'm feeling at the moment and how I feel about the situation in general. So yeah, do check that out. Right, let's get back on track. So the part of the press conference that I'm talking about, and I'm sure lots of you have seen it, Mikel was trying to explain the bad form, or he was trying to kind of paint a picture around the fact that we're unlucky and this and that. And this is what he had to say. He said, when you look at the perspective of how we're losing football matches and how we are where we are, it's pretty incredible. Last year against Everton, we won the game with 25% chance of winning, supported by the stats. We won 3-2. Last weekend, it was 67% chance of winning any Premier League in history and 9% of losing, and you lose. 3% against Burnley and you lose. 7% against Spurs and you lose. There is something else apart from that has to go our way, and at the moment it doesn't. Saying that, it doesn't care because you lose, and the only thing that you care about is losing the match, and that's why we're here. The quotes are a little bit confusing, and I've just realised that by sort of reading that. But what Mikel was trying to say is that based on statistics, based on the data that his team have put together, or the data that is put together centrally, whatever, that Arsenal have been unlucky to come away with the results that they have come away with in recent times. Now, I'm not going to go massive on this because I do kind of get where he's coming from, in the sense of I do think that Arsenal deserved, or have deserved, more out of the last 5 or 6 games than they've actually got. Now, that's not to say that they deserve to win every single one of those games, or that the performances are good enough or anything like that. But if you look at that game against Everton, Arsenal did deserve more, I thought, than to get beat. I thought Arsenal deserved more in the game against Spurs. And there's been a number of games like that where you look at them and you think, we weren't good today, but losing feels a little bit harsh. And so I get where Mikel's coming from. I just think that people don't want to hear that kind of stuff right now, you know? And I think with him coming out and saying that we're kind of unlucky, or that we probably deserve a little bit more out of those games, I think there'll be Arsenal fans out there that disagree with it. And I think there'll be some Arsenal fans out there that do agree with him. But to actually reel off the stats or the percentages or whatever it was that he reeled off, I don't even know what to call those, because I haven't really heard a great deal about chances of losing games as a thing. But to reel off those numbers the way he did, I think will rub people up the wrong way, because they will feel like it's just irrelevant hyperbole that Mikel is throwing out there to try and defend himself. Actually, the reality is that, you know, you can be unlucky once, you can be unlucky twice, you can be unlucky lots of times, but you can say we're unlucky, but you can't look at any of those recent games, any of those recent defeats, and say we absolutely 100% did enough to win that game and just didn't win it. There's been defensive fragilities, there's been poor finishing, a lack of creativity. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I think that Mikel is right when he says that we probably deserve more out of some of those games than we actually ended up with. But to try and use that as some kind of, or to try and use those numbers as some kind of justification for Arsenal losing games and then making it out to be purely down to bad luck, I think is not helpful at this time. And I think that there will be many Arsenal fans who will be up in arms about that and won't really be accepting of that. And I understand why. I think that Mikel, to go to something like that, to pull that out of his back pocket, suggests that he is feeling the pressure a little bit, suggests that, you know, he does pay more attention to the kind of the goings on outside of the club than he would suggest. He spoke in the press conference about not reading stuff, not reading comments, not paying a great deal of attention to that. And then when it was put to him about whether or not, or about the sort of the rumored disharmony behind the scenes and the fact that could be having an impact, he said, no, I do pay attention to it. So he kind of changed his tune on that as well. So Mikel is well aware of the noises doing the rounds at the moment, I think, contrary to what he said. And I thought, actually, when it comes to his comments about reading what people are saying in the media, I thought he contradicted himself a little bit there. And that is a sign of someone who's rattled, because he's not a stupid man, Mikel Arteta. He's a very intelligent man. I'm sure he'll be well aware of what's going on. And the easiest way of a manager, putting to bed rumours or putting to bed questions from the press, like the one he faced about sort of players in his squad being unhappy with him and the relationship breaking down. Best way to put those to bed is to pretend that you don't read it and to pretend that you don't know anything about it. And Mikel tried to do that, and then he kind of got sucked in by a later question, which you would argue triggered him a little bit and actually got him backpedaling a little bit in terms of what he'd previously said. So interesting to see Mikel in these press conferences now, because he's a less calm, he's a less calculated figure than he was previously. I think he's tried to be honest throughout, but that honesty, you've got to try and work out when it comes to Premier League managers, how much of it is genuine honesty, how much is it them playing a game, how much of it is them deflecting, how much of it is them trying to put out a fire, i.e. trying to make sure that they don't completely lose the fans, trying to protect some of their players. There's so many elements to be in media trained nowadays, and there are some very clever journalists out there who will ask some very clever questions in a bid to get Mikel to slip up. And I thought he did slip up with the whole about the whole sort of line of comments about him not reading what is being said about him and the team at the moment. So I did think he slipped up a little bit there. It's interesting because, you know, Mikel has an opportunity now in the Carabao Cup to provide himself a little bit of respite. If Arsenal could pick up a result against Manchester City, that will give him a little bit of respite, at least until the weekend when Arsenal play Chelsea in the Premier League. But, you know, the pressure is mounting every single day. And I just think like press conferences like this one are not going to help him in that sense, because I think his biggest critics will look at that load of numbers that he rolled off and say it's absolute nonsense. And if it's not nonsense, then it's completely irrelevant. And Mikel said it himself, didn't he? He said all of that stuff, and then he goes, but it doesn't matter if you're losing football matches. Well, if it doesn't matter, why did you bring it up? He brought it up because he was trying to deflect. So it's you know, it's like me saying something, making an excuse for something and saying, oh, but the excuse doesn't matter. Then why did I make the excuse? It doesn't make sense for me. I think that he does look a little bit rattled. I feel like there is probably a breakdown in the relationship between him and some of the players. He said that he doesn't want doesn't look like he's going to give up on this fight just yet. He doesn't look like a beaten man yet, but he does look like one that's under pressure. And when we sort of sit and assess his press conferences and try and break down every sort of word that Mikel says, try and read between the lines, I think it's also important to remember that in comparison to some of his counterparts, and by counterparts, I mean those also managing big football clubs in this country, he is very inexperienced, and he is going to struggle at times to make the right comments in that sort of environment. And we're in a world nowadays where, you know, you'll find snippets of it, you'll find quotes from it branded around social media, and people will react to them. I think you have to watch the whole thing in context to understand it. I thought when I first heard it, because I heard that particular line about the percentages before I watched the full press conference, and I thought, wow, this is strange. And then I watched it, and I still think it's strange. I still think it was a pointless thing to say and a silly route to go down, but it is not as bad as when you just read that one particular quote, or when you just listen to a soundbite. So, like I said, I'm not going to go too big on it because he did turn around and say, but it doesn't matter if you're losing football matches at the end. But I just thought it was a little bit strange, and a lot of people, I think, share that opinion. And I think you've probably gauged that from social media this afternoon by the number of Arsenal fans commenting on Mikel Arteta's comments with regards to our chances, the percentage of our chances of losing certain games that we've ended up losing. Let's see what some of you guys are saying in the live comments as well. And we'll come on to talk about some team news ahead of the game. Ahead of the game against Manchester City in the Carabao Cup tomorrow evening. Big hello to Kevin Campbell. He says, hi, Harry. Hope all is well. Arteta needs the players to step up. God forbid the players actually stepping up and fighting for the club. Arteta has to do whatever he has to bide his time and get the deadwood out. Yeah, I think that we all recognise that Mikel is not the only issue at Arsenal Football Club at the moment. Do I think he's been perfect? No. Do I think he's made mistakes? Yes, I do. But I think anyone sensible acknowledges that actually this is deeper. This is deeper than just Mikel Arteta. It's an issue in terms of the players. It's probably an issue in terms of further up the line as well. Edu, Vinay, you know, do they create the right culture from which these players can succeed in? There's so much to take into consideration, I think. Jeff Talkington says, Harry, you're not a manager, are you? If you are, fair enough. But otherwise, you really can't comment on a new manager chosen by Arsenal FC. No, I'm not a manager. I don't think any football journalist out there is a manager, but they all comment. And this is an opinion-based show, and I'm going to continue to share my opinions. And lots of you are tuned in to hear those and to debate those, and that's absolutely fine. But I think any Arsenal fan, journalist, anyone who gives up any of their time or effort to follow this football club has a right to comment on what's going on at the football club right now. And I don't care if I'm not a manager. My job is to talk about football, and that's what I'm doing. And therefore, I will continue to make those comments. But yeah, I mean, if you're saying, am I qualified to comment on how good Mikel Arteta is as a manager, I don't think it's that deep, mate. I don't think people need to go into it in that much detail. The fact of the matter is Mikel Arteta achieving currently at Arsenal what he was brought in to achieve? And I can't say that he is. If you look at Arsenal's position in the table, 15th in the Premier League, that is absolutely unheard of. So I don't think it's unreasonable, unfair, or necessarily makes you underqualified if you're suggesting that actually Mikel is maybe not living up to what the club had hoped he'd be doing at this point. Let's say hello to John. He says, big up Harry, John from Dubai. Do you think the January transfer window will help Arteta turn around the season? Hopefully Partey will be fully fit by then. I do think when Thomas Partey comes back, it will make a massive, massive difference. I think, we've got a lot of issues at the moment, and we were absolutely rocked by the fact that Thomas Partey picked up that injury and then returned and then picked up another injury. It's really knocked us for six. We know the midfield needs improvement. We know that's an area in which we're looking to build, and Mikel begun that build by bringing Thomas Partey in the summer. It's just been unfortunate that a player who has had pretty much zero injury issues throughout his football career, has now come to Arsenal, and all of a sudden we've been hit by that. So definitely rotten luck in that sense. But a club the size of Arsenal have to be able to cope better than we've managed to cope without Thomas Partey. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Marshall Ayub says, regarding Mikel's comments that we were discussing a little bit earlier on, it shows that he's in fear of getting sacked. It certainly looks like he is a little bit more prickly, a little bit more nervous now than he has been previously. And understandably, when results continue to go bad and results continue to deteriorate, the longer this period goes on, the longer we're gonna see Mikel struggling, and the longer we're going to see Mikel acting in this way. I think that he's going to be feeling the pressure himself, and as a manager, don't you, if you're under pressure or not, really, regardless of what the club are saying. In terms of publicly, Mikel will know that he's not achieving what he needs to be. He'll know that his team are not at the level they should be. He'll also be well aware that this squad, contrary to what people say, is better than being 15th in the division. And he'll be well aware of that. And a lot of that pressure will be put on him by himself. But in terms of him fearing the sack, I think you do, as a manager, you do generally know when your job is on thin ice, and whether the club is saying that or not. Chris says, hi, Harry. I honestly don't see where our next win is coming from. We are awful. Willian, Xhaka, Bellerin, Elneny, Mustafi, Holding. I could go on, but you get what I'm saying. He's out of his depth. Yeah, he is out of his depth. But, as you've just mentioned a load of players there, of which he brought in one. He brought in one of those players. So I do have sympathy for him when we're talking about, certain players letting him down. And we were having this debate on the phone yesterday that, there were Arsenal fans coming on and saying that we expect Mikel to just dump all the senior players and start playing youth week in, week out. The problem is that you can talk about dropping people and people make it sound as though it's really, really easy to just tell all your senior players, you're not part of my plans anymore. Push them all to the wayside and bring in a bunch of youngsters. At the end of the day, and I said this last night and I'll say it again, Reece Nelson hasn't proved that he's good enough to produce at the top Premier League level consistently. Neither has Joe Willock. Neither has a number of those players. Emile Smith-Rowe, Fowler and Balogun. And everybody's calling for them to be in the side. As a manager, would you put your faith in a bunch of kids that haven't ever delivered, and now Eddie Nketiah, another one? These players have never produced with any regularity at Premier League level. So what makes you think that they would do a better job? This is kind of my point. It's not as though we've got standout players sitting around on the substitutes bench, and Mikel's just point blank refusing to use them, with the exception of Mesut Ozil, who's definitely good enough to be in the squad. But we're not going to go down that rabbit hole again. You're talking about replacing this current crop with unproven youth on the most part, and that isn't going to dig us out of a hole either, in my opinion. So I get why Mikel is sticking with some of the players that he has stuck with. He probably feels that with their experience that they could probably, or that they probably stand a stronger chance of turning it around than a bunch of kids would. And I think that's an absolutely fair opinion to have. Big hello to Anthony Richardson. He says, I love it when you wear your hair backwards. I'll wear it just for you, mate. Just for you. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Sorry, just scrolling through the comments. GP says Arteta has gone mad. Nicholas Holmes says Martinelli, Balogun, Saka and Pepe, just let them play. Saka and Pepe are playing. Martinelli will probably play more now that he's back. Balogun, we spoke about this again last night. There have been so many rumours over the last few weeks about Balogun potentially leaving the club. He hasn't committed his future to Arsenal Football Club yet. Therefore, you can probably understand why Arsenal are reluctant to use him at this point. If he is in talks with Liverpool, if he is discussing a move away, if he is digging his heels in about a new contract at Arsenal Football Club, why should he be given time ahead of people that aren't committed, that are fully committed? That's kind of the point, isn't it? So I think with that one, you've got to be a little bit more open-minded about what could potentially be going on behind the scenes, and understand maybe that there are probably other reasons that he's not getting the opportunities, reasons that are not to do with his performances on the pitch. Neil Jones, he says, "Hi Harry, the Arsenal is no more. Let's just adapt to mid-table from now on. Shame on all the Wenger critics. This is what you get when you sack your greatest manager." Look, I think we all agreed at the time that it was time for Arsene Wenger to move on. I think we can all also agree that the way he was hounded out of the club was wrong. But yeah, you make a great point. When you look at where Arsenal find themselves now, this level of mediocrity, this level of struggling was not something we saw under Arsene Wenger. And for all people used to say about him, we were never in this position in the Premier League by this point in the season. So, the treatment of Arsene was harsh. I think hindsight is a wonderful thing. I think a lot of us knew it at the time. Others let their emotions take control. He made lots of mistakes as well in the last few years of his tenure at Arsenal. There's no doubt about that. But we weren't in this state. So I think, you're right to make that point. Alex English says, "Hi Harry, Arteta's press conference is as bizarre as it can get." Yeah, it was a little bit weird, a little bit strange, a little bit desperate, in my opinion. And as some of you guys pointed out earlier on, it kind of just highlights the situation we find ourselves in right now, and the kind of mood among not just the players but the manager as well. Harish Kumar says we should start playing youngsters because we right now are playing too slow, not moving quick enough. Psycho Vibe says when everyone throws stats at you, you will in turn throw stats back. Yeah, that's a great point. He's been going into press conferences and getting asked about the number of crosses that his team put in and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of get it. Mikel definitely went into this press conference with that up his sleeve, because as you point out, rightly so, people have been kind of going on at him about stats in recent weeks, and he probably felt that he needed to defend himself a little bit. And if stats are the way they're going, then why not battle back with some stats? Yeah, no, so it's a great point. Really, really good point. Hello to Miss Melina. How you doing? Welcome to the stream. Russ says, fruity conversation on last night's video, Harry. Want to see if people in the chat haven't watched it yesterday. Yep. If you guys haven't seen yesterday's live fan phone-in show, check it out now. It's available on the channel. It's also available in audio format. Don't forget to like it, subscribe, share, leave a review, whatever, depending on which platform it is you're listening to it from. But really appreciate your support and would love to hear your feedback on it as well. So do check it out. Let's see what else we've got here. Stavros says, Arteta, time is running out. Go now. Thank you. Ibrahim Saeed says, what do we have to lose this season? Might as well give Arteta, and he should trust youngsters and aim for the Europa League. I think what you're trying to say is we should give Arteta more time. Yeah. I don't know anymore about this. I don't know. 2-3 weeks ago, I would have said the same thing, but with each passing week, my faith is waning in Mikel Arteta, and I'm starting to worry about whether he has the experience and the know-how to get us out of this situation. That's not to say, as I've said previously, that I don't think Mikel will go on to be a good coach at some point in his career, but I just feel like this was a massive job to take. Not only was it a huge club, but it was one in desperate need of a rebuild, and for a first job, mate, Mikel must have really, really backed himself to take this. I think he would have known it was a difficult challenge when he first took the reins, but I feel like more and more has happened, more and more has unraveled in the last year, and things, like Mikel says, have hit him that he didn't expect to be having to deal with, and having to deal with those has obviously added another layer of challenges to what was already going to be difficult for someone going into their first job. Matthew Beaumont says, hey, Harry, do you think it's too early to give up on Pepe? I'm having major doubts about him now and probably looking to take a loss on him if we tried to sell him on. I think it's clear that Pepe's not playing with any confidence at the moment. He's not playing with a smile on his face. He doesn't look happy. I don't think that the way we're playing as a team helps him. I don't think that Nicolas Pepe necessarily wants to be at Arsenal right now for a number of reasons. I don't think he feels like he's got the full support of his manager, because even when he does play well, he's left out afterwards. I still think there's a player in there, though, and I still think that when you compare his sort of contributions in terms of direct goal involvements to some of the other players that we've got in those wide areas, the Nelsons, the Willians, those guys, he still performs to a better level than them. And I think that's often forgotten. I think the price tag certainly didn't help Nicolas Pepe, and it's only made things more difficult for him. I'm not completely giving up on him, but if people are, I understand why. It just doesn't look like a good fit. Never really has from the day he walked in, which is a problem. Ekene Ogbodo says, Harry, I totally agree with you in a lot of issues, but you talk like those British journalists who make a mountain out of a molehill to have a headline. Arteta said those stats mean nothing. If those stats mean nothing, why has he sat in front of the world's press to reel them off? This is my point. It's no good saying something and then saying, oh, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. Well, why say it in the first place? Why say it in the first place? If he didn't want to put it across, if it means absolutely nothing to him, why say it? He said it because he wanted to make the point. And then he tried to backtrack a little bit by sort of suggesting that although he said that, although he's just obviously gone into the press conference and memorized those stats, he's now decided that actually, but they don't really mean a great deal. Oh, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that. I don't think it's making a mountain out of a molehill. I think it's discussing the comments of Mikel Arteta, the Arsenal manager, and comments that I found a little bit strange, and comments that I found, a little bit unnecessary. If it's so unnecessary, if it's so insignificant, if they're not important, like he then went on to say, then why bring them up in the first place? Just classic Mikel Arteta just sitting on the fence, I think. Ibrahim Saeed says, would you take Guendouzi or Torreira back on loan? I think that we could really do with Matteo Guendouzi right now. But the problem is that given the relationship between Guendouzi and Arteta at this moment in time, if we were to try and call him back, I don't even know if we're able to do that. I'm not sure what the clauses are on the loan deal. But if we were to do that, would Matteo Guendouzi want to return to help Mikel Arteta? Would he want to come back and try and get Mikel Arteta out of a hole after all that's gone on between the two? Difficult to say, isn't it? Really, really difficult to say. Mafia Boss says the club is too big for his boots. It is a massive football club, and it does feel very much like he's just taken the job too soon. Nana says, I don't know why Arsenal can't play without Can't play well without Partey if we weren't playing well without him before. Bad Boy says a lot of Allegri planning to replace Arteta. Rumours today. I can't see Allegri coming. I'd like to see Allegri come. But I don't see it at this moment in time. Somebody like Max Allegri would come to the club and want to be backed. He'd want to be backed to the point where he'd be able to turn this ship around. And I don't feel like Arsenal would be able to make those guarantees right now. And not just because of sort of the way the club's being run or just purely down to internal measures. The global pandemic has had an impact. And a lot of Arsenal fans sit there and go, oh, this is nonsense. Why do people go on about it? Why do people actually make an issue of it? The club have got loads of money. No, it has had an impact. It's had an impact on every single football club in the world. So I do think that, if even if we were to attract someone like Max Allegri, in terms of what they would get as a salary and stuff and their bonuses and all of that stuff, it would be about proving to them that they would have the tools to get to work on this project. And I think somebody like Arteta, who didn't have the clout that Allegri would have, given he's a new manager, will be a lot more willing to take certain circumstances and work under certain circumstances than somebody as seasoned and as successful as Max Allegri. So it's there's a lot of rumours about it, but right now I just can't see it. I just really can't see it. Let's see what else you guys are saying at the moment. DVV says, what is your opinion on him having 2 right backs on the bench on Saturday instead of one of the kids? I think you're right. I think that was another strange decision in a long line of strange decisions that we've seen from Mikel in the last few weeks. And we're wondering why we're in this position. And why there seems to be this disharmony within the camp where there are a lot of weird decisions. And you can understand why people like yourself are raising some of those questions, because you're right. What do you need 2 spare right backs on the substitutes bench for? Paul J says, this rubbish about most of the players aren't his players. No manager is hired to only perform when he has sold the current squad and replace it with his own choices. Complete nonsense. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Part of being a manager is working with the tools at your disposal. How many managers have gone into a club and turned around the whole starting 11 within one transfer window, and that was that? No, you will get time to build your squad over the next 3 or 4 years, but as I've said time and time again, when you're playing for a club, or when you're managing a club as big as Arsenal Football Club, you have to be getting a certain standard, a certain level of results along the way to earn that time. You need to earn the right to have that time, and to do that, you need to be hitting a minimum standard. And we can all agree that with Arsenal languishing down in 15th place in the Premier League, they're absolutely not achieving that standard. Dan says, do you do watch-alongs? No, I don't, mate. I have done in the past. I've got to be honest, I do enjoy doing them, but at the same time, I also enjoy sitting down and, watching the game in peace and in full concentration and with family or whatever and friends and stuff. So, yeah, maybe it's something that we could put back on in the future if people are interested in them. But at the moment, no watch-alongs at the minute. Chris says, I agree with you, Harry. It isn't all of Arteta's fault, but going from being a number 2 at City and being offered a job at a huge club is a big no for me. Zissy says, I agree that we have unproven youths waiting in the youth. However, Torreira, Balogun and Saliba must surely be considered. The Mesut Ozil thing coming up again. Srinidhi says Arteta should play Ozil. Aaron says, hey Harry, do you think that Oba actually has a calf injury, or is Arteta playing it safe for Chelsea? I think this is interesting. I think we probably will see him back for the Chelsea game. I got to be honest. I'm not, there's a lot of people sitting there going, there's more to this, and there's maybe a bit of another issue going on in the background that we're not aware of, and trying to make sense of it and trying to understand. And obviously Aubameyang's not been in great form, and his body language has been questionable. And I feel like it's too convenient to just say that something's gone on behind the scenes and that's why he's really not playing. So I'm not going to really get drawn into that. But in answer to your question, Aaron, I think there is probably a slight injury, and I think that, we know he's not going to play in the Carabao Cup game, but I do expect him to return for the game against Chelsea, unless we hear otherwise, of course, between now and then. The Overlord of Procrastination says, good point on Balogun not getting a game, mate. Yeah, look, I'll just quickly repeat that for those guys, for those guys that have just joined the stream. Balogun may not be playing because Balogun won't commit his future to Arsenal at the moment. Balogun is rumoured to be in discussions with a number of other clubs. If the kid is talking to Liverpool, which is one of the things that we're hearing quite a bit at the moment, then why would you be picking him for Arsenal? His head's obviously elsewhere at the minute. So, again, look, we can comment, we can speculate on a lot, but if we don't know the full ins and outs of certain things, it is difficult to make an accurate assessment. And I do think that Balogun's future is probably, or the uncertainty around Balogun's future is probably playing a part in him being overlooked. I've got to be honest. Guys, quick reminder, if you haven't already, I should have done this earlier, but we just got carried away talking. Let's have a quick check-in. Make sure you hit that like button if you haven't already. Can see there's over 250 of you watching us right now across the multiple platforms. And to all of those of you that are going to be joining us later on, welcome. Smash the like button on the video if you haven't, on whatever platform it is you're watching us from. Leave us a review if you're listening via the audio, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. John says, hi Harry, great return comment to Jeff. Got to agree with you on most things. I do believe he has made a boo-boo with the exclusion of Saliba, and I do believe the team selection is a manager issue. I've also heard that Arteta tells them not to play from the back, to play from the back. I think the mistake there is we are not your Man City boys under Arteta with company and co. We have a useless Luiz, a terrible Bellerin, an uncertain Leno. It's an uphill battle, I think. Xhaka, Elneny, Mustafi, Bellerin. The comment just cut out there, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I get your drift, and there is a danger, isn't there, of trying to play in a certain way when you don't have the tools to do that. And Mikel's got to find the balance now, or he's had to find the balance for a while between doing what is going to get us the best results, but also trying to implement something for the longer term. And that's where the biggest difficulty is. But right now we're in dire straits. And right now, I think you have to put everything else to the side, sweep it all off the table for a minute, and just get back to focusing on what is going to get us results to stop this slump. That's my view. Robert Jones says, we just have to ride these hard times. I honestly think Arteta can turn this around. He has the club's best interests at heart. Yeah, look, I don't for a second think that Mikel Arteta's intentions are not right, that Mikel Arteta is not desperately trying to turn this around. But he is struggling at the moment. And you're right, as football fans, we experience hard times and difficult times. It's just, I think, a lot of us felt that we were moving forward under Mikel Arteta after that FA Cup win, and the reality is that since then we've been regressing, and it's a concern. It's disappointing. It's hard to take, and let's hope that this period ends sooner rather than later. Troy says, I've heard the geezer who runs the burger stall outside the Emirates has applied for the job as the manager. Let's hope not, because his burgers are delicious. Wouldn't want to lose them. Foddy says, hi Harry, apart from being inexperienced from the spine down, we also have a delusional manager. Not a fan of Mikel then. Marco Arigoni says, I want Bellerin and Xhaka gone in January. Who would you like to see go? I'd like to see us move on a lot of these players whose contracts are coming to an end at the end of the season. The Socrateses, the Mustafis, the Ozils. Either you're going to use them, you're going to keep them as part of your plans, or you're going to move them on. And I just don't like uncertainty. That's what I don't like. When it comes to players and their futures, I hate uncertainty. And it feels like we've got a little bit too much of that in the squad at the moment. I think that Bellerin has been bad recently. I think that Xhaka has been bad recently. And we need to upgrade on those players eventually, but I don't think they're the only problem. And I think that they are a couple of the names that people tend to scapegoat. Now, it's not to say that they don't deserve some criticism, but there are others who deserve an equal amount of criticism that don't get it. There is a lot of scapegoating in this fan base. There is a lot of finger pointing at certain players, and it seems to be the same players week in, week out. And when they do perform, they don't get the praise. But of course, when the team fail to perform, they're the first ones that get singled out. And Marco, I think that those two names that you've mentioned are two of the prime examples of that. Are they good enough for the long term? Do I want to see them playing for Arsenal for the next 3-4 seasons? Absolutely not. But we need to rebuild this squad, and we're going to need to do that gradually over a period of time. We hoped in the summer that Arsenal were going to move out a load of deadwood, a load of shit players, get them off the books, move them on. We were going to be able to sell them, get a bit of money in the door. But that wasn't to be. It wasn't to be for a number of reasons. So, yeah, we're going to have to wait and see who we can move out. And look, when you talk about moving players on, it's about the demand for them as well, isn't it? You need somebody to come in and be interested in signing those players. Otherwise, how do you move them on? So, yeah, you need the demand to be there as well. Paul Murphy says, I often read a lot of criticism of Holding. Am I missing something? He's good in the air. His passing is good and he plays with passion. Got stick for the Spurs game, but was left exposed by Bellerin. Yeah, in the Spurs game, he was definitely exposed by Bellerin. I think Holding has good games and I think Holding has bad games. For me, with Holding, I don't look at him and I think he's dreadful or he's that bad or he can never do a job. I look at Rob Holding and I don't see a top-class centre-half, and we need top-class centre-halves. If you want to compete at a very top end of the Premier League, you need a good standard of centre-half, and Arsenal just don't have that at the moment. I think Gabriel's been good this season. It's been one of the bright sparks, actually, in this side this season. But, it's not for me when it comes to Holding. I don't think he's complete shit. I don't, want him necessarily to even leave the club or anything like that. I just don't think he's amazing. And I just think he's a good Premier League defender and nothing more than that. And we need better than good at the moment. Chris Giorgio says, hey, Harry, love your shows. What's more likely, Big Sam hammering the final nail in Arteta's coffin or you trimming that beard of yours in 2021? This is nothing. You should have seen it 3-4 weeks ago. It was out here. We're not going anywhere, are we? Just not going anywhere. We don't see anyone. We don't get to go out. So, yeah, I'll just leave it. But look, Big Sam was an absolute mess of an appointment by West Brom, in my opinion. Some people would disagree. I thought it was extremely harsh that they sacked Slaven Bilic in the way they did. West Brom squad is pants. It's a championship squad. What did they expect Slaven to achieve this season? And I would love to see them get relegated now and kill that record of Sam Allardyce's, because make no mistake about this, this is a much more difficult task for Sam than he's had in previous years. People talk about his time at Sunderland and other clubs. He had decent players there. He doesn't have decent players at West Bromwich Albion. He really, really doesn't. And you saw yesterday that new manager bounce, not quite there. I know he didn't have long, but normally when you make a managerial change like that, it's to get a bit of an instant upturn. And they didn't obviously get one in that game against Aston Villa. I don't see West Brom surviving this season. So, fingers crossed he's not the one to hammer the final nail in Arteta's coffin, because I can't stand Big Sam. But definitely overrated. Definitely not going to keep West Brom up, in my opinion. And, the beard will continue to grow. Ariane says, didn't Favre just get sacked from Dortmund? Do you think he would suit at Arsenal? He works extremely well with young players and we have loads of them. I'm not 100% sure, mate. I'm not 100% sure because I haven't watched a great deal of Lucien Favre's Dortmund. I covered a bit of the Bundesliga when football first restarted. Saw a fair amount of them then, and I thought they looked a really, really good side, but they have some really top players there. And so it was impossible to work out, just based on a couple of games, how much of an impact Lucien Favre had on that and how much of an influence he did. Look, he's been sacked, so obviously things weren't going as the club would have liked, and you need to take that into consideration as well. I'm starting to lean towards the opinion of Arsenal need to make some sort of change, but let's see if they're going to do it first, and if they are, who it will be. Not a name I'd pick out though, Lucien Favre, not for me anyway. Ibrahim says, Harry, your thoughts on Rafael Benitez as a manager or in a sports director's role? I think Rafa would be great at steadying the ship right now, and I think that's what we need, particularly if these results continue for a couple more weeks. I think we're going to need that that calming. Is that the word? Calm? No, I think we're going to need someone to come and steady the ship, and Rafa is certainly someone with the experience and the tactical nous, in my opinion, to be able to do that. Marshall says, Harry, your show is very slept on you, bro. Am I reading that right? You undoubtedly deserve more subs, at least 1 million. 1 million, I wish. Keep up the great work, bro. You will be big. Love and support the great content. Much love from a Liverpool fan. Thank you for tuning in, mate. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already on YouTube, please do so. We've just hit 10,500 subscribers. Let's keep that going. We've got around about 7,000 as well on the audio platforms too. So the show is constantly growing. Let's try and get to 20,000 subscribers across the multiple platforms as soon as possible. That would be great. PAVFC says, bring in signings or squad, or is the squad fixable internally? I think it needs both. I think that the squad could be achieving more than it currently is with some internal tweaks, but I do think we need signings as well to get closer to where we need to be in terms of challenging for those European places. Thank you very much as well, mate, for your very kind donation. Gonna keep going through the comments. I'm gonna skip through a few guys just because I'm running out of time. Just gonna pick a couple more out before we lock off, so I apologize if I do miss your comment. I will be sure to pick those up on the next program. Make sure you chuck some of those in for me as well next time around. Let's see. Just going to pick a few at random. While I'm doing that, let me know in the live chat where you're listening from, and I'll give you guys a shout out. It's always nice to know where you guys are tuning in from. Let's pick out this one from Hola Donkey. The problem with Arteta is that he plays the wrong players and is willing to sell keepers. Obviously, Roberto Martinez left the club in the summer. Vlodko Star says, don't you think it's a plan to show owners what could happen if they don't spend big in January? No, this cannot be a plan. Arsenal to be in 15th place in the Premier League cannot be any plan, in my opinion. It's a shit situation to be in. We're in dire straits at the moment, and we need to really buck up our ideas, because if we don't, things could get nasty very quickly, and Mikel could be out on his arse before you know it. And I think we can all agree, well, maybe not all agree. I don't want to see that happen to Mikel. I want him to succeed. I'm not sure he will now, if I'm being brutally honest, but I do want him to. So obviously I don't want to see him sacked. I'd prefer that the results turned around and that the results were back on track, rather than him being sacked. But it's not got to that point for me yet where I'm sitting here saying, and I don't think it should ever get to that point as a fan, but there are points where you look at performances, you look at particular games and you go, do you know what, if we lose that but it means he's gone, then I'm not going to accept it, but I'll be less bothered by it. I do think I got to that point with Unai Emery at one stage, and I'm not afraid to admit that. But with Mikel, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet because I think that there is so much work that needs to be done in other areas of the club as well, that it's harsh to point all the blame at him as well. And we can have a go at him for being inexperienced, but we also got to understand that he was the club chose him, the club selected him. Big hello to Alan joining us from Qatar. Mr. Bungle is in Southampton. AM is in Eritrea. Fatality DMB is in West London. So big shout out to all of you guys as well. Right, that brings me to the end of today's stream. We'll be back tomorrow with a couple of shows, actually. So we'll be bringing you one in the morning. So stay tuned for that. I'll be going live at 10 a.m. So come and join me for that. and will be going live after the Carabao Cup tie against Manchester City. So come and join me for that one as well. Turn your notifications on if you haven't already. That way you'll never miss a show. If you're listening on the audio, don't forget to leave us a review, and we'll be back very, very soon with more. Until then, take care and enjoy your evening. Cheers.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.